program. I am the first one presenting under the new MSP lecture banner. And thinking about it is one thing, doing it is another. So we are going to hang in there and try to make sure we get everything ironed out. I love the idea. Again, thank you, MSP, for inviting me to do this. I love the idea of it. And if you were here to see the video, I want you to think about some of the pictures that you saw. They weren't just pictures of me. That's not the point of it. The point was that when I thought about what to talk to you about, the idea of what your role is in this 2020 racial reckoning that we've had at least since May 25th, when we all saw what happened with Amy Cooper and Christian Cooper in Central Park, and then what happened to George Floyd, we have come to the realization that there is a sea change happening in the country. And I am sure that some of you are wondering what it is that you can do, what you should be doing. Should you be going to school? Should you be doing something else that you may think may be more meaningful? And I thought it would be a good idea to talk about what some of those possibilities are. And I started off thinking, well, I've got a couple of photos that I can show them of when I was in college and doing social justice work. And I'm laughing because one of my favorite pictures of that time, and I came out of high school in 1968 and went to college in Ohio, a small college in Defiance, Ohio. And when I went, I came from DC, big city with a Black population like many of you coming from Atlanta, and didn't really know anything about, race. I'd never had to think about it before in any serious way. And as it turned out, it became a huge part of my life and what I did forever. But one of the reasons I love the picture that you saw of me knitting is because I was in the Black house at my college that we had asked for, and Defiance is a predominantly white small college. We had asked for a Black house. We managed to get a Black house. And we were at a meeting, some sort of strategy meeting, but you see what I was doing. I was sitting there knitting. And very often when we had, as it turns out, we were the most active in Black Power movement for small Ohio colleges, and Ohio has a lot of small colleges. We ended up with me trying to figure out what my role was. I supported the idea of equality, but because I came from a background where I didn't really know a lot about this, I just sort of had to fit in and figure out, much like many of you are probably trying to do now, how I could best be of use. And one of the other pictures you saw where I had a car coat on, if you even know what a car coat is, I was standing right there with one of my really good friends, Greta, and we were over at the presidential, the students had Black students had decided to take over the president's office. I knew that could get me in trouble and I could get put out of school. So I wanted to know what the heck was really going on. And that was a picture of us walking over there and looking to see what was going on with this takeover. But that just goes to show you how far that journey can go. Every one of the pictures you saw, no matter what that picture was a picture of me in some way doing something about social justice. And the reason I chose such a wide range of pictures is because turns out there are a wide range of pictures. And I didn't realize it until I saw the video that you saw, the slideshow, that was taken from hundreds of pictures that had been put together for, as many of you know, I'm retiring at the end of the semester, and have been gathering things for the slideshow for the retirement party that one of my former students wanted to give for me. But I had never looked at those before. I just sort of been stuffing stuff in there. And when I got ready to prepare this for you, it was the first time I looked at it, and the first time I really came to realize how much, and this is going to sound weird for those of you who know me and have known me for a while, but how much my life has been about nothing but social justice. And the pictures that you see, no matter what they are, were pictures of how that was manifested in my life in some way. So virtually every picture out of the many, many, many ones that I have of me and students are with students whose lives I have impacted in some way, in the social justice realm, even if that was just reaching out to the students and encouraging them to be all that I knew they could be. So yesterday, I had a student who years ago was a graduate student when he took my employment law course, and just after he took it, he ended up in prison, and should have been in federal prison. Turns out he was doing something with credit cards, getting empty credit cards, putting numbers on them and using them, okay? Don't ask why, he wouldn't even be able to tell you. But we wrote the whole time he was in prison. He did a complete turnaround. We stayed in touch. He came to see me in my office at UGA when he got out last year. And he told me that in prison he had done a complete turnaround, in part because of being supported by me and me encouraging him at a time when he had been sort of taken away from society. And what he ended up doing was wanting to, he was exposed to a lot of people who were in prison for wrong reasons. They were poor, they couldn't afford attorneys and stuff like this. And he decided that his life's work from then on was to help those people. He ended up writing a book about it. And he told me he wanted to go to law school. I encouraged him. Now, think about that. He's a convicted felon at this point. And he wanted my encouragement to have him, he wanted to know how I felt. And the way I felt was to encourage him to do it, even though there's no guarantee that he could be a lawyer at some point, because some bars may not let him in because he is a convicted felon. But I encouraged him. So yesterday in the mail, I get I took it out of my mailbox yesterday. It was actually a federal holiday. It had been in there for a minute. But it was a thank you card for him. Guess why? Because he was in law school. He was in law school, and he wrote to tell me, he sent me a beautiful card and told me thank you. And he just would not have been able to do it without my work. I want to use that example, number one, because it just happened. I just got that card yesterday. But I want you to understand the impact of social justice work and you and what you should do in light of what's been happening since at least May, but I'd say for the last 401 years. I have no idea. I had no idea when we spoke that this would happen, that he would actually end up in law school. I just knew it was important not to kill his dream, and I knew he was capable of doing it. Also, I took him to meet our dean of the law school. I took him to a Black Law Student Association banquet at the end of the year. I took him to last year's Rite of Sankofa event, where, in fact, I happened to be being honored. But I did that because I wanted to encourage him. And he is now in law school. He is not only now in law school, but he has made it his life's work from now on to help people who are imprisoned unfairly. Think about how many people that is going to touch, not just the people he helps, not just the people in prison who are incarcerated, but their families, their friends, people who cared about them. He is going to bring to the fore the idea of how people are treated, particularly minorities, when they come into contact with the criminal justice system. That, in a very direct way, is doing social justice work. And I'm calling it social justice work because I think that anytime somebody is treated unfairly because of essentially immutable characteristics that they have, race, religion, color, national origin, sexual orientation, disabilities, being differently abled, any of those things is something that really lessens all of us. And it has been my life's work to get society to see that we are all just human beings and we are entitled because of that to dignity and respect, aside from the fact that we are a particular race or gender or sexual orientation. So doing that work, I want you to understand, especially in light of what you've seen, doesn't necessarily have to come in the normal way that we think of protesting in the street or something. That's what grabs headlines. But the real work of it, the real change in society, comes from people doing the work every day of how this ends up impacting people's lives. So in his life, the way the system had impacted him was that he was incarcerated and ended up meeting up with other people who, as it turns out, in his view at least, he did not think should be incarcerated. And that changed the trajectory of his life. And if I could encourage him, if I could take him to meet the dean, to go to be around other Black law students, to be at Rite of Sankofa so he could see you all graduate and know what he was capable of doing, even though he had graduated and was in graduate school. That's social justice work of a kind. I don't know if you remember, but you saw in those pictures, and this was very intentional on my part, you saw quilting. I make quilts and I do them by hand. You also saw a beautiful heart-shaped bread that I baked. That quilt I made was made for my ancestors. It was to honor them because of what they had done in going through slavery, as well as the Jim Crow era, right up to my parents who were in the Jim Crow era. In fact, I was born, the 64 Civil Rights Act didn't pass until I was 13 years old. This was made to honor them. Now, you might not think of that as social justice work, but when I'm quilting, it is a way of not only connecting me to my ancestors, but it's also a way for me to show other people. That quilt was used in a talk I did to the entire university at some point to encourage students to have a place from which they could dig deep when life's adversities hit them. Okay. I had not made that quilt with that in mind, but that's what ended up happening. You saw another quilt that I made after I attended the Democratic National Convention, just because I wanted to breathe the air in 2008 if a Black man was going to be the first person who was nominated to be president of the United States of America as his Democratic Party representative. I knew nothing about Democratic National Conventions, nothing about them except, that's where people went to make the nominations. I grabbed my sister and I said, we're going, because if a Black man has even a remote possibility, and it was more than remote at that point, of being nominated, I want to be there. And you do too. And we want it for not only ourselves, but we want it for our progeny, our descendants, who will know that we supported a candidate there. I ended up making a quilt out of things that I got while I was there. I don't know if you noticed, but there are flags all around because there were flags in the seat. And when it was over, his nominating speech, I went around and I collected all the flags I could. Had no idea what I was going to do with them. What I ended up doing was making that huge quilt. And around the edges are flags that I got from that night. What you probably saw most of was divided by red strips. Those are on fabric. The emails that I sent to my family each day, and ended up being able to put them onto fabric and work them into the quilt to share this experience with them, because everybody can't go to a Democratic National Convention. You also later saw, and I ended up making this huge quilt to commemorate that occasion in 2008. You also saw a picture of me when I actually went in 2016, when I thought there was the possibility and in fact, it did occur, of the first woman being nominated. And only this time I actually went as delegate. Ask me how that happened. Wow, I never would have told you I would have done that, and didn't seek to do it myself. But that again was a type of social justice. Now think about how different those things are. Quilting on the one hand, being a delegate to the Democratic National Convention, where Hillary Clinton was nominated as the first female candidate to be nominated for President of the United States of America. But they all are a part of social justice, just as much as the picture that you saw of me when I was giving the campus-wide speech back in, I don't know, 90 or 92, for the first time anybody ever heard the word diversity on campus being used in the context of race. And you saw the plaza, Tate Plaza, they have the banner there, and I was there with my family under the banner, just sort of having fun taking pictures. And the bread, let me go back to the bread for a second. I believe in what I do because I believe ultimately that it is all about love. If we loved each other, we would do it. Love is not just a noun, it's a verb. And we love each other through what it is that we do. And I am constantly, hearts are what I love. It is I don't know if you can see that, but it is the one tattoo that I have. And I have it right there on my chest because I love the constant reminder to love people and to make it an act that I do. And that manifests itself in social justice. And the bread that you saw there, that wonderful almond bread, that loaf, was a reminder, so that even if somebody sits down to have a meal with me, they are reminded that it's all about love and it's about how we treat each other. So when you think about what you want to do in light of what's happened, I don't want you just to think that you have to march in the street. There are many different ways that you can do this. Today I got a letter in class. We were talking about COVID today, and my students were grousing about them not thinking that the university was doing enough. And I told them, I said, do not sit around and complain. Do something about it. And especially if you're going to talk about things that you really don't know anything about. And when you start talking about President Moorhead is not doing anything about this, you're going to have to run into me because I know him well enough to know that he is somebody who is a consummate actor, whether you realize it or not, whether you see it or not. Believe me, he is always on the job and he cares tremendously about students. And if they didn't think that if he was doing enough for them, and they were talking about, not feeling like there's been enough transparency and stuff like that, y'all, and this is the same thing about what's going on now and how you should react to it. Don't just sit around talking to your friends about it. Your friends can't do anything about it. Speak truth to power. It's one of the most powerful things that you can do. So I said, don't just sit here and grouse at me. Talk to him. Send a letter to the president and ask him about it. That is something I want you all to feel like you have the right to do. If UGA gives you nothing else, I want it to give you a sense of absolute power, a sense of agency to be able to create change. That's why you're at the flagship university of the state. This is, if you don't do it, who's going to do it? This is the expectation that you will create change. And the student said, oh, he wouldn't look at a letter from me and stuff like that. And I said, look, it's easy to say that because you haven't done it. Try doing it. And then see what happens. Then you can say, he ignored me or he said something really mean or nasty to me or something like that, which of course would never happen. Well, surprise of surprises, later that day, I get an email from the student that is a copy of a wonderful email he sent to the president outlining precisely what his issues were with what was going on with COVID. He did it in a very logical way. It was very reasoned. The tone of it was really good. Now that is something you can feel productive about. And that's about what he does. And that's all you have control over when you're thinking about what you want to do in light of what's been happening in 2020 with the racial reckoning. You don't have control over anything else but you. You can do what you need to do, what your conscience tells you you should do. And then you have to leave the rest of it up. And if you don't get the results that you want the first time, think about it. We've been at this for 401 years. Okay, you're not going to necessarily get the results you want. There are people who don't want you to have the results that you want. So you just have to keep on going at it. When you think about what to do, let me tell you this too. I had a student who wrote me today, also a student who emailed me and said, my conscience has been so awakened just in the 2 weeks that we've been in class now. You've just made me think about stuff that I haven't ever thought about before, and I want to do something. This is a white student who sent this to me. So she said, I understand that I don't come from that same background, but this is wrong, and I want to be able to do something about, racism. It's just not right. What should I do? And I said, well, it just so happens I'm giving a talk tonight on that very same thing. But what I told her is the same thing I want to tell you. Do what you can, when you can, how you can. Do what you can, when you can, how you can. Racism happens every single day of the year, 24/7. And there's probably, if you chose to spend your time on this event, chances are you have experienced it in some way, shape, or form. Okay, it may not be that you were denied a mortgage, you don't even have one yet. But think about things like being a Black male and having somebody say, oh, what sport do you play? And you came here on Hope Scholarship. Okay, or being a Black female and having, or Black student, minority student, and not feeling like you have the Greek organizations, the full range of Greek organizations open to you while you're here at UGA. I want you to think about the ways in which it's manifested in your life, and I want you to be able to deal with it and use what I call teachable moments. Those you can do all the time as it comes up. Because y'all, the biggest problem, especially in your age group, of the people that you will meet is not that they are racists, okay? That's a word I infrequently use. I mean, there are racists, but the vast majority of people, and I've been doing this work for decades, the vast majority of people are not racist in the usual sense of the term. They are people that simply don't know. They're just like my student who wrote to me and said, I just didn't know. Well, why would you know if you've never been exposed to it? And it's easy for us to say, how could you not know? Well, if I ask you what's going on among the Hmong people, chances are you probably couldn't tell me, okay? But they didn't just come over here because they wanted to. They came because of oppression. Do you know what that is? Do you know what they're undergoing? No, you don't, because it's not on your radar screen. Okay, we cannot know. And if people don't know and they want to know, like my student, and want to do better, like many of the people that you're coming into contact with now, you've seen it in the wake of what happened on May 25th. If that's happening, you don't want to discourage them by calling them essentially the worst thing you could call a white person in most people's view. Instead, deal with the reality of it. Not knowing is different from knowing and not giving a crap. Okay, and you want to hurt people regardless of what you know. So teachable moments become very important. When somebody says something like, what sport do you play? Use that opportunity. Be willing to say to them, you know what? You probably don't realize that what you just said assumes that I'm here as a Black male only to be able to play sports. But the truth is, I'm here on Hope just like you probably are. Think about what that does. You didn't get angry. You weren't threatening in any way, which we know is part of the package that comes with you just being Black and male. If you're female, Black and angry, okay? And you taught them something that will forever make them think about what happened and what they said without even really thinking about that representing a stereotype that they had that made perfect sense in their head, given what they were operating with. I teach students that come from all kind of backgrounds. I had one whose paper I was reading this weekend who told me he was from Forsyth County, who not only had Oprah come there in the 80s, and I remember that TV program, but he said they're still doing the same thing there. Now, if he grew up in that environment, what is he supposed to know? But if he, what I don't care what you knew. What I care about is, what are you willing to learn? And what he now realizes is that was not a background that gave him what he needed for the real world. And he is willing to learn how to be better. We don't have any control over what it is that we were exposed to growing up. Very little control. We didn't ask to be born. We didn't choose our parents. We didn't choose our home. We didn't choose our school. You're just getting to the place where those kinds of things are things that you are able to understand had an impact on you. I'm willing to work with people who are willing to move away from what it is that they have been exposed to, that may have given them a background that isn't necessarily the one that we would want them to have in terms of knowing all they should know about us. But being willing to learn more, I'm willing to work with you. In fact, after the May 25th events, I got so many requests for information until I set up a website for resources. And I said on there, if you're willing to learn, here's some stuff for you to be able to access. Practicaldiversity.com is the website. The Heart Work page is where I put resources for books. There are articles that you can click on. There are videos that you can look. There are questions that you can ask yourself. And I urge you, that's one of the things you can do. You can use that as a way of giving people resources, saying, you know what, you need some heart work, okay? And I got a website for you, because that allows them to do it on their own. It's sort of a one-stop shop, self-guided introduction into why things are the way they are right now. So as you're thinking about what your role is, number one, I want you to know you have one. Okay, you absolutely have one. One of the things that makes me feel comfortable about being able to retire from UGA after 32 years of being here, and knowing from the very minute I came, and the reason I came was because the president of UGA at the time, Chuck Knapp, asked me to please come and help UGA move forward, which, as it turns out, I have been doing ever since. But one of the reasons that I feel comfortable in leaving is because, y'all, I understand that you're the Joshua generation. You are going to turn this stuff around. It has reminded me of learning to ride a bike. You remember when you learned to ride a bicycle as opposed to a tricycle? You didn't just start off pedaling it. First you had the training wheels maybe, or your parents held it. And at some point you felt comfortable enough to sort of go off on your own. Well, in a lot of ways, our country has been working up to now. And I've lived through a lot of it. I've lived through every single major movement there has been. I was at the 1963 March on Washington, where King gave his dream speech as a 12-year-old. I've watched all of the stuff, the women's stuff, the LGBT stuff, the Black stuff, the civil rights stuff, the Black Power stuff, all of it. And each time we go a little bit further. And I know the last few months have made you seem like we have not made any progress. And in fact, we may have regressed. And to some extent, that's actually true. But these aren't new things that came out. This is stuff that was always there. People have now felt, because of Trump, able to make it known that they feel this way. But these people have always been there. We've always operated despite the fact that they were there. And I feel comfortable now knowing that I can let go of that bike. That generation that's coming, you all are people who are, your reality is one that says, this is simply unacceptable. We are here, we are prepared to move forward. We have been doing the work of positioning ourselves to be able to take over and to make this country what it should be. With you being able to do that work, I'm okay with leaving and thinking they got this. I don't have to worry about it. They've got this. I don't, there's, I can continue to do stuff, but I really don't need to, because the truth, although of course I'll still be available, but the truth is that you're able to go through what you need to go through to make this reality that came about because of what happened in this racial reckoning that we're still in the midst of. So I want you to know, number one, that you do have a role in it. Two, you choose what that role is, and don't think that you're limited to things like simply marching. Write letters to the editor, write letters to people who are in power, make your feelings, your thoughts about this known. For whatever powers that be. And of course, I don't need to tell you, you absolutely need to vote. Okay? Vote, and vote the right way, because we don't need this to continue. We want to turn this around and make it easy on yourself by having somebody in power that you would be able to help, you think would be able to help with that. So as you think about what to do, seriously understand that being in school is an important part of it. Talking about it is an important part of it. The social media is an important part of it, but you also want to do things other than social media. I'm sort of not worried about you doing that, because the fact that you would show up at something like this tells me that it's something that you care about and that you want to be able to know what to do. But don't put any sort of boundaries on what you can do. Think big. Dream big about what you want for the world, because ultimately all we want to do is be treated like we are the human, wonderful, incredible human beings that we are. And making that known to people can be done in many different ways, whether it's, stopping somebody when they tell a joke and just saying, I really don't get why that's funny given what's going on, or using it as a teachable moment where you actually explain to someone who does not know why this would be an offensive thing to do. Give people space and grace. You need space. They need space to be able to understand and learn. If you were in a classroom and I chastised you because you got the wrong answer, it would not facilitate your learning. In fact, it would probably make you back away from it, because now that you feel white folks are in right now. People who are not minorities are in this position because they're not, they haven't known before. But you can't kill them just because they don't know, or because they say the wrong word or use the wrong term or do something that you happen to know is not a good thing to do, but they don't know. Teach them. How else are they going to learn? And in doing that, be gracious about it. Give them the space, give them the grace, and expect it of yourself as well. So I understand that we're supposed to leave some time for questions. I am sort of at a loss here because I can't see anything on the screen. I can't see you all like I would in a class. So I'm going to stop right there. They told me to go about a half an hour. I set the timer, and that's what I did. So now I'm going to turn it back over to them, and I think I'm supposed to look at chat. Now, y'all, you're going to have to stick with me here, because I'm not used to looking at chat, because I'm so used to just lecturing. So, and I don't even know how chat plays with you. Like, I don't know if you can see me if the chat is up. But that key of the Asian American Student Association, do you believe that social media has changed the way we can participate in activism and reaching out to power and political figures? Oh, how many ways can I say yes? Y'all, I cannot tell you the number of letters to the editor, letters to the President of the United States of America, letters to the Supreme Court, letters to anybody in power that was doing something that I thought needed to be checked, I have done. I had to go get a stamp. I had to use a typewriter. This is how long I've been doing this, or handwrite it. You don't have to do that. All you have to do is sit at a computer and tweet something, or send something specifically to that person. You have things available to you that caused the whole overthrow in 2011 of governments around the world. It was all done through the internet. use that, but know that it's only a means in and of itself. And also be careful of what it is that you are imbibing in that situation. Sometimes people, and you know this, we all do it, which is why I have to limit myself in terms of what I look at. Sometimes you just get hyped up by what you see, and it becomes an echo chamber because everything you see sort of supports what it is that you are thinking about. But y'all, the thing that makes it wonderful is also the thing that makes it easy and makes it sort of the detractor from it. People, especially with COVID, you know, people have more time because they're not commuting if nothing else. They'll sit there and write anything, or you know, just sort of act out their rage through social media. Be careful in who you expose yourself to and what you expose yourself to. I specifically limit the kind of things that I look at on social media because I know that I will get upset. And it's sort of like you looking at it becomes your reality. And some of that reality you just don't want there. Some of it, you know, is just somebody ranting and raving, but you've taken it as serious, and or somebody else picked up on it. Plus, of course, with that anonymity, people feel like they can say things that they would not ordinarily say, and it's just not productive. It's just not productive. I am looking for answers, okay? I am looking for solutions. I don't want people just mouthing off. Mouth off to the people who can say something, who can do something about what you need. So when you're thinking about using that social media, use it, but use it judiciously. Okay. So I am so gonna screw your name up, and I hate that. Is it Adanze Nyagu? Okay. Research shows that your favorite words in the whole world are your name. And I really hate that I'm screwing this up, but just know that it's my heart, okay? My head, not my heart. How do you let people know your expectations for change without coming across as confrontational about still letting them know you're serious? I did. I said it correctly. Oh, awesome. What a great question. I love this question. I'm a lawyer, so of course, for me, words are so incredibly important. The word confrontational is a word I rarely use. I I can't tell you when I've had a confrontation. Now, I've told people precisely how I feel, but I don't think of it as a confrontation. I think of it as me telling you how I feel. The reason that becomes important is because the thought is the parent to the act. If you think of it, if you put it in your head as a confrontation, that word has a sort of negative meaning to it. I'm getting ready to, sort of gird my loins and go forth and, like cuss somebody out or make it. Don't put it in your head that way. I have a assignment I have my students do where they can write any question they want to about any group. And I take these questions, they're anonymous, but they're email. I cut and paste them into a handout that I then give back to my students. That handout is shocking to them because it's no holds barred. And I tell them, this is the only time you're going to be able to ask this and get away with it. And we will discuss it as an academic activity. We will discuss those questions. Well, the questions can get kind of hairy. Why do Black people like grape Kool-Aid or watermelon or fried chicken? In which case I have to tell them, I don't know when the last time was that I had grape Kool-Aid. I don't think that all these watermelons that I see in that great big box when I go into the store are only for the Black people. I see plenty of them with them, plenty of white folks with them, and others in the checkout line. And when I was in China, where there are very few Black people, I saw KFCs on virtually every corner. So, and of course, by doing that, part of what they see is that these are stereotypes in their head. But when they do that exercise, students come up to me all the time after class and go, Dr. BA, like, how can you remain cool when people are like asking questions like that? Y'all, it's about education. You got to keep your eye on the prize. I don't care who you are, whether it's me as a professor, and I do this even in non teaching situations, and I'll give you an example of what I mean in a second, um, or whether you're a student. Think about and keep this in your head. What do you want? What do you want? What's your end game? That will dictate what you do. So you want somebody to think, see, that's what the black folk do. And you know they're not going to say black folk, but you know they're going to be thinking it. Okay, that's what they do. They get mad. Here we go with an angry black woman. All this kind of crap. I don't give you all of that to play with. When I leave you, all you have to think about in your head, all you can think about is the substance of what we talked about, where I used it as a teachable moment. So let me give you some examples of that. And again, not confrontational, simply sharing. Okay. One time I was in a store. I was in a department store, and I was the fifth person in line. There were four people in front of me, and all of them paid with a credit card, and all of them were white. Took the credit card, rang it up, gave them their stuff, they went. Get to me, can I see your ID? And I said, oh, that's interesting. Why do you need to see ID? And she said, oh, because that's our policy. If you pay by a credit card, you have to show your ID. I said, that might be your policy, but that's not what's happened. And she said, oh yeah, we ask everybody that. I said, I was the fifth person in line. There were four people before me. All of them paid with a credit card, and nobody was, all of them were white, and nobody asked for, you didn't ask them for their ID. The first thing this woman says is, I'm not a racist. I said, I didn't say you were. I'm telling you the facts of what happened. Now, how you take that is on you, but I'm just telling you what happened. The same thing happened at a restaurant. I was there with a family, my family, we were celebrating something. So there were a lot of us, and it took forever for us to even get water. And then it was taking forever to get the bread. And then, it was just too much. And one of the things that is always on this list that I told you my students do is, why don't Black people tip? So I know this, right? Because I'm getting this from white students all the time who are servers. So I said to the person who was waiting on me, it was a young white woman, and I asked her to come. She came, and I said, let me tell you this. I said, we've been sitting here for 45 minutes and we still don't have water or bread. The place is not that crowded. I said, I know you think that we don't, as Black folk, tip, but I'm here to tell you that not only do I tip, I usually tip more because I understand that that's the sort of stereotype people have about us. She said, hold on. I said, and I told her, I said, I'm telling you this because not everybody would be as nice as I am about this. I said, but I want you to serve us as if you respect the fact that we're sitting here just like everybody else is. The next thing I know, she goes away, she comes back with the manager, and she is absolutely in tears. And I said, what's going on? So he said, well, she told me what happened. And I looked at her and I said, if I had wanted the manager, I would have asked you for the manager, but I didn't think I needed the manager. I needed to tell you so that you didn't do this anymore to anyone else and have them react in a way that really would have made you feel bad. I said, I'm a professor. I teach. That's what I do. That was a teachable moment. I told you that we had been sitting here for 45 minutes and we had not been served anything. And that just was unacceptable. The manager tried to give me a $50 gift certificate. And I told him, I said, I don't want your money. We came in here to pay for what we asked for. I said, but to be ignored is simply unacceptable. And he begged and begged and begged. And finally, I took the $50 gift certificate. But I didn't get angry. There was no confrontation. I used it as a teachable moment. And let me tell you how you can use humor with it and do what seems appropriate under the circumstances. I was with my daughter and we were going to a UGA home game at Stegman. And I had never been to Stegman's parking lot before, so I didn't know quite where Stegman was from the parking lot. And there were some white folks going somewhere, and it was a game time. So I figured they must have been going in the same direction. So we said, we'll follow them. So we're right behind them. They get on the elevator, the doors close, they stand there, and not a thing happens. Nobody moves a muscle to try to hold that door, right? And we were right behind them. So my daughter and I sort of look at each other like, okay. So we pushed the button, waited for the elevator, took a long time to come. And when it came, the doors opened, and there are all these people still standing there. That's the universe at work, okay? I have no idea why that elevator did not stop and let them off, but it did not. And there they stood looking at us, knowing, it was so clear from their faces, knowing what they had done. So I had to very quickly think about what I wanted to do about this. Did I want to, be mean? Did I want to give them the side eye? Did I want to cuss them out? Did I want to say something to my daughter as we get on the elevator loud enough for them to be able to hear? What? I kept my eye on the prize. The prize for me is to get you to not do things like that again, to teach you better. So I got on the elevator and I said, you tried to leave us, but it didn't work that time, did it? And everybody broke out laughing. In fact, by the time we got up, we were only, as it turns out, going one floor up. By the time we got on off the elevator, everybody was looking at us because it was like, okay, it was an elevator. Like, what the heck could have been happening to make them laugh so hard just in that, elevator ride? But I have the satisfaction of knowing that they will never have Black folk behind them again, and they get on that elevator and not try to hold that elevator or otherwise show that they respect the fact that somebody is coming and is going to be treated like a human being. Okay, so think about putting it in your head the right way. Y'all, it doesn't make you any more woke to be pissed off at people. I have been doing this for decades. I'm as upset about this stuff. I'm probably more upset than you can even imagine. But I'm not going to defeat the whole purpose by being pissed off all the time at folk that may not have anything to do with what's going on. So you choose how you want to act, but keep in mind what your whole goal is, your end game. Your end game is essentially to stop racism, sexism, homophobia. What's the best way to do that? Not by feeding into stereotypes that give them a red herring to go off and not have to think about the substance of what you're saying. Okay? Deal with it as if it's somebody who needs to know. Now, again, there's a difference between the people who do know and don't give a shit and people who want to do better. Okay, we're not even dealing with the other one. We're not dealing with the folk. Okay, the tiki torch carriers, leave them to themselves. I had a student who got upset about something in class the other day. It was factual. We were just talking facts about what had happened with redlining. And he wrote me and he said, I want to make sure you're fair. And, I know the kind of work you've been done. And then he gives me all of this absolute just trash about who Black folk were. And he said, so I want to hear what you have to say about that. So I simply emailed back, I give out information. I teach, okay? I give out information for the purpose of teaching, to provide information. I said, I don't give it out to persuade people. This is America. You get to think whatever you want to. I respect the fact that you have a different view. Thank you. And that was the end of it. I'm not going to sit here and try to convince him that Black folk did not suffer or don't continue to suffer under redlining. That's ridiculous. I'm not even having that argument. Okay, so Anonymous asks, in this day and age, it's difficult for me as a student to feel like I have a voice in America. What steps do you think I can take as a student to advocate more for Black people? Think about what that voicelessness comes from. What would it mean? Because that's a conclusion. Think about what it means for you to feel like you are voiceless. What would having a voice look like is really what I'm really thinking about. What would having a voice look like to you? And like I said, you only have control over you. Okay. You don't have control over anybody else. If you use your voice, you are not voiceless. You're using your voice. Now, like I told you too, Black folk have been at this for 401 years. So for you to think something is going to happen overnight, you're probably going to be disappointed about that. Using your voice does not mean that you will get the results you want all the time when you want them. But it does mean that you have made your thoughts known in the way that you think is most appropriate for what it is that you're dealing with. Think about it. I have been here for 32 years. There are some programs that they are just now having. And if I had given up a long time ago, I would probably still not be here. I'd be off making real money, teaching somewhere, practicing law somewhere. You can only be voiceless if you let yourself be voiceless. There's no such thing as you don't have a voice. Speak truth to power. In fact, and when you do that, understand, stand in your truth. Stand in your truth. If this is true for you, it is true for you. Don't let other people detract from that. Like, I'm going to have somebody tell me that Black folk don't suffer discrimination because Asians did. And this is what the student said. If Asians can do it, y'all can do it. You just don't know. Okay. My truth that I live every day is a totally different thing that tells me you just don't know, because that's clearly not the case. When you think about the range of things I told you about what I've done for social justice, the letters to the editor, y'all, sometimes people listen, sometimes they don't. When I first got here, I sent a letter to the editor for the Athens Banner Herald because I didn't understand why, when they were telling me about a car accident or any other thing, they would say John Doe, colored, had a car accident and, his wife, colored, was hurt. I was like, what? Did race have something to do with this? Like, why am I looking at the race of these people? So I wrote a letter to the editor about it and said, I don't understand why you're giving us the race of these people when it doesn't have anything to do with it. If it has something to do with it, well, of course it would be relevant. If you're telling me to look for a certain person, then you have to describe them. But otherwise, I don't see it. Well, I'll be darned. They ended up taking it out. I was sitting in a faculty meeting where we were hiring, and there was already a decision when we came in saying the candidate that's Asian, the Asian female, is acceptable, the white male is acceptable. We spent the next hour and a half debating whether it should be one or the other, okay, when that shouldn't have been a debate. Finally, somebody said, what about affirmative action? And long story short, I was so steamed when I got out of that meeting that I wrote a letter. We now have, before you can hire anyone, you have to have diversity training. Okay. It was just me making the clear argument for why this ought to happen. And it turned out it did. Sometimes it will hit at the right time and somebody can do something about it. Other times you may have to go back several times in order for you to get it. But don't think you don't have a voice. Use your voice. Look at what happens and think about the reality of what happens and whether it's even possible before you say you don't have a voice at all. As a Black student, y'all, Black folk have always been creative. They have always made a way out of no way. They have been the ones who have led, and students too. Remember what I told you about being a student in 1968. The Black Power movement was basically a campus movement. What you want to do and what you're willing to do are two different things. And then what you do. So don't think you're voiceless. You're absolutely not. Get people together, organize, and have them do whatever it is that you decided is the most appropriate thing under the circumstances. And like I said, there's a range of stuff you can do, whether it's a Twitter campaign against something or a actual letter writing campaign or sending letters to the editor. Use your voice and do not give me this crap about I'm only one person. There's not anything I can do. I'm only one person. Martin Luther King was only one person. Malcolm X was only one person. Indira Gandhi was only one person. But they ended up influencing others. And do not underestimate the power that you have as the power of one to influence other people. And if you don't think you're influenced by other people, that you have influence over, think about your group. You wear your hair a certain way, you wear certain kinds of clothes, you do certain kinds of things because of the influence of the group. Use the influence to have the group do the kind of things you want them to do that you think will move us forward. Oh, do I have another one? Oh, that was the last question. Okay, it took me a while to get there. All right, so I think what, like our time is up? This is so weird, y'all, dealing with this format where I'm not actually talking to people who are here. John? Oh, okay, yep, time is up. All right, I've done my job. Now you go out and do yours. And thank you again for coming. Thank you for being interested enough to come. And thank you, MSP, for doing this for the students. And y'all, tell your friends, because these are the range of things that you're going to have for these lectures is going to be awesome. And I love it that they have allowed you to do this. Doesn't this make it a lot easier? You don't even have to get ready to go. You can just turn on your computer. All right, I'm out. Thanks so much for having me.